And the ANC's National Working Committee visit to KwaZulu-Natal comes after debates within the ANC's top brass on whether the ANC in KwaZulu-Natal Provincial Executive Committee should be dissolved and replaced with an interim structure. Let's unpack what this means with political economist Dr. Dale McKinley. Dr. McKinley, perhaps to start the conversation here, the word renewal entered the ANC's political lexicon in 2017, just leading up to that Nasrec conference. 7 years later, do they have a sense of what renewal looks like, feels like, and how it ought to be executed?
I think they're trying to still find it, Oliver. That's the renewal that Sir Ramaphosa talked about, as you said, many years ago, did not really take place, as we saw. I think the core of that renewal, for many who are waiting outside, ordinary voters, ordinary South Africans, was to see the party act against those that had broken the law, that had involved themselves in state capture, that had involved themselves in the deterioration of service delivery issues, and this didn't happen. And as a result, the ANC paid a heavy, heavy price in the last national elections. So it's somewhat difficult to ascertain when the president or when Premier Lesufi or other ANC officials begin to talk about, we still need to renew ourselves, whether that can be really taken seriously, because people are waiting for action. They're waiting to see that some of those individuals that are well known, that are still within the ANC, that are members of parliament or still hold fairly high office, are held responsible for what they did. And until that time, I don't think most people are going to see the renewal as something that is going to really work for the ANC. You could say that the ANC has begun to get itself together in relation to some of its policy positions, to be more consistent, to be a bit more organized in its messaging and other kinds of things since the elections. But I would say that that's probably as a result of the shock of the outcome of the elections and the feeling that if they don't do something, they're going to really be in serious decline. So no, the answer is no. I don't think we've seen the renewal process yet. It's too early for that, I think, in the context of this GNU. But the ANC needs to act fairly quickly, particularly in the major metros and where it's in coalition governments, to show the electorate that it's serious about what it talks about.
Our continent is littered with examples and case studies of liberation movement parties dying a slow death in terms of electoral decline. Now, the ANC in KwaZulu-Natal took a nosedive to 17% of the vote, having been a majority party in the previous administration. Can the ANC in KwaZulu-Natal bounce back from the 17%? And what does that look like? Does it include asking the radical question, should we dissolve the structures we have in this province and start afresh?
Well, I mean, if you look at why the electorate punished the ANC, besides the rise of MK and I think what was mostly a protest vote in many cases, or those who were within the ANC that had always been loyal to the ex-president Zuma, I think the answer to the question is, can they revive themselves? Well, it's whether or not they can begin to, for example, turn around eThekwini and turn around the municipalities that are broken. Where people simply don't have the basic services and are wondering what their government is doing. If the ANC can begin to do that, well then yes, they can recover at least some of that ground, and they can show people. But more bus parades, more meetings, more strategic reviews are not going to cut it in this case, and more statements in that case. What is it going to take to do that? Yes, it's going to take some new blood. I mean, that was the one thing that, members, residents of eThekwini were baying about the mayor and about the old faces and the same people, and we're saying this similar things in Gauteng in many cases with the ANC. So yes, there's a space for new people to come on board. Whether or not just doing away with the present structures would be an answer to that, I'm not sure. But what is necessary is new ideas, new people, new energy, and a new commitment to actually service people and to remember why the ANC is in office. And I think that's the fundamental point, is that the ANC in KZN and in Gauteng got too arrogant and got too lazy in power, and they paid the price.
Yeah. Do you anticipate or do you foresee a future where a post-Ramaphosa ANC, for instance, and that would be close to the next conference, be an ANC that takes serious a conversation about reabsorbing the MK vote back into the ANC? As you said, it's a protest vote. Traditionally, those would have been ANC voters, bringing it back into the ANC fold, once again consolidating what would have been its majority in KZN.
Well, it's, the question is, can you get over the enmities of individual egos and the politics of grievance? I think the sense is that right now, ex-President Zuma doesn't want to have anything to do with the ANC as long as Cyril Ramaphosa is in charge. I mean, this was clear when they rejected the coalition agreements right from the beginning after the elections. So a lot of it, I think, depends upon, it's not just about the ideas. I think there's not a great deal of difference if you actually boil it down. I mean, there's a lot of rhetoric, there's a lot of radical rhetoric coming out of the MK about, that they want to change the constitution and they want to nationalize things like the EFF. But I think when you come down to it, when people begin to get into power, they generally tend to coalesce in terms of some of the key policy positions. So I think in this case, it's going to be a question of the leadership and getting past these politics of grievance, past their conflicts. And if they can do that, well, then yes. I mean, the EFF was an outgrowth of the ANC. MK was an outgrowth of the ANC. And in fact, they're all within the same larger umbrella when we come down to it. So they could pull back together. And the major pull factor would be power. So let's be honest.
Yeah.
I mean, most of the politicians join political parties not because they fundamentally believe that they're going to change South Africa, but because they want a job and they want to be in those positions. And if the ANC can offer that and offer the best opportunity and vehicle for that, then they have every basis for reabsorbing MK and EFF in the longer term, yes.
Just a last question, circling back to an earlier point here. Now, this is not the first time the ANC would attempt an initiative and an intervention like this, as it is now attempting in KZN. It did the same with the Northwest, for instance, when Supra Mahimapelo was still the chairperson of the ANC in that province. Now, of course, Supra Mahimapelo went on and survived that in a different sort of way. But one can ask, did the ANC in the Northwest survive the intervention over there? The ANC seems the reaction from the ANC when structures are dysfunctional seems to be to disband them. They did it with the ANC Youth League and they did it with the ANC Women's League at some point. Is that a good strategy for rebuilding an organization by and large?
No, it's not a good strategy in the longer term. It might be an immediate reaction that one can, if there's a crisis situation and you need to reset, and yes, you could do that, but it's not something that you can continue to do. I mean, the fact is, the examples that you gave of the Women's League and the Youth League, they become shadows of their former selves as a result of those kinds of interventions. So the ANC it will cannibalize itself if it begins to continue to do this constantly again and again and again. What it needs to do is it needs to take seriously the business of being and organizing and being in a political party, which is if you're on an NEC, if you're on an REC, you serve. You don't serve for yourself, you serve for others. And I think it's that principles and values that are at the core. You don't necessarily destroy, you rebuild by building a new cadre. And the ANC's cadre needs to be rebuilt, not necessarily all of their structures.
Yeah. Dale McKinley, thank you so much for your time and your insights. Really do appreciate it. Always fantastic talking to you.